Hi there, scholars. This is Miss Quinonez, and today I'm really excited to be back online with you guys. Today we will be talking all about rhythm and also math. And I know it kind of sounds weird to put something like rhythm and math together, but actually in music, we use a lot of math, we use a lot of rhythm, and it's very, very necessary for rhythm and math to work together if you're trying to do things like write music, play music, or read music, and even work in a big team like band or orchestra. Okay, so today we're going to be talking about different types of rhythm and also be turning in some music math equations at the end of the day. So before we actually get started, what I want you to do is go grab a pencil and one or two pieces of paper. This is going to be really important because we will take notes today, scholars. So not just notes like music notes, we will be writing down some of the information that we learn so that today, when you go back into Google Classroom and you do your assignment by yourself, you'll be able to have a lot more help, a much easier time getting all that done. Okay, scholars? If you are ready to move on, you already have your pencil and your paper, then let's get started. Also remember, scholars, that you can pause at any time if you need extra time to take notes, or if you didn't hear something or you want some extra practice, you can always rewind, pause, and go back in this video, or even watch the whole thing over again whenever you need to. Okay, scholars? Also remember that whenever I write something in yellow, you'll see that color yellow on the screen. Whenever you see something like outlined in yellow or written in yellow, that's what I want you to put on your paper. Okay? So if it's not written in yellow, you don't have to write it down. So I'm going to let you know with the colors what you should have on your paper. Okay, scholars? So to get started, let's start talking about our first type of rhythm. Now, my first type of rhythm is here. It's called a quarter note. If you've been with Mr. Allard in music before, or you've just taken music classes elsewhere, you've probably seen a quarter note. It's a very common, very, very basic type of note. This is what it looks like. So it's always got this oval down at the bottom, or just connected to it somewhere. And then it's also always filled in. So if you can see, I colored mine yellow to show that my quarter note is always full. It's never empty, and it's always connected to a stick. It's got a stick on its side. Now my quarter note, this is very important, is equal to 1 beat. Now, if you don't know what a beat is kind of how we measure music. Now let me talk about that just a little bit more. So let's pretend that somebody says, I have $5. Now $5, if we think about $5, we know exactly how much that is. But if somebody says, well, I just have 5, we don't really know what they're talking about. They have to tell us more information. They could have 5 pennies, 5 quarters. They could have 5 puppies for all we know. We don't know what they have 5 of. But when somebody says, I have $5 or I have 5 pennies, then we do know how much that is. It's kind of the same for music. So this word beats, it's kind of like the dollars of music. We always say that notes have a certain amount of beats, just like my quarter note is equal to 1 beat, because if we don't, then we're just going to end up saying 1 what? If I said my quarter note is equal to 1, well, 1 what? Is it 1 puppy? $1? 1 beat? What is it? Okay, so remember, I only need you to write down what I have written in yellow. So that so far is my title or my label of quarter note. I need you to draw the quarter note just like I did, and also show me that it is equal to 1 beat. Okay, scholars? Let's keep going and start talking more about different kinds of notes and how many beats they get. Now my quarter rest is very similar to my quarter note. So even though this is called a rest, it still has the word quarter in it. Usually when something has the word quarter in it in music, it makes it equal to 1 beat. Did you guys see how I used the word beat again? Remember, you always have to include that word beat or beats whenever you're talking about music. So my quarter rest is equal to 1 beat, just like my quarter note. This is what it looks like. If your quarter rest doesn't turn out exactly like this one, that's totally okay. They're kind of difficult to make. And while you guys are writing all this down, I'm going to do an example music equation. So let's pretend that I have 2 quarter rests and I want to add them together. I just kind of did a couple of squiggly lines down here at the bottom to kind of look like quarter rests. But let's pretend I'm trying to add 2 quarter rests together. Now my first quarter rest is equal to 1 beat. My second quarter rest, well, it's also equal to 1 beat. Now if I'm trying to add those together, that gives me 2 beats. Pretty easy peasy, not too bad. And this is what happens whenever we have more than one type of beat. So if I'm just looking at 1 quarter note or 1 quarter rest, then it's just 1 beat. But if I have, let's pretend 4 quarter notes, if I had 4 of them up here, then that would be equal to 4 beats because each one of these is 1 beat. So it'd be like 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1. And that would give me 4 beats. I hope this makes a little bit more sense, you guys. Don't worry, we're going to be talking all about music and math today. So we're going to be talking about this a little bit more later. Now my half note is a different type of note. And remember, scholars, always rewind or pause if you need to go back and get some extra notes. But for now, we're going to move on to our half note. Now my half note is a different type of note. I know that because it looks different than my quarter note. My quarter note was full in the center. It was colored in completely. My half note is not. It's empty, but it still has this stick attached to its side. So my half note, you would just draw the oval, kind of like the outline, and then you would draw the stick connected to it. Now, it's worth 2 beats. So this note is actually longer. It's actually bigger. Longer is the best word to describe it. It's longer than my quarter note because my quarter note was only worth 1 beat. But if I have half notes, each one that I see is going to be equal to 2 beats. So let's pretend that I have 2 half notes here. I want to put them together. Well, each one of these is worth 2 beats, right? So this would be like adding 2 plus 2. We know that 2 plus 2 is 4. So we would just write 4 beats. And remember, always including that word beats so that we know that we're talking about music. Okay, scholars, let's keep moving. Now, this next note is a dotted half note. Now, the dotted half note, it's similar to the regular half note, except they've added this dot here on the side. Remember, if it's in yellow, scholars, that's what you should have written down in your notes. So if it's outlined in yellow, like this title or this label, your note, and then usually how many beats it's worth. So my dotted half note is very similar to my half note because it looks almost the same. They've just added this extra little dot following it. Now what that dot does is it adds 1 extra beat to my half note. So if my half note was 2 beats, then this dot, this one right here, it adds one extra beat. And altogether, my dotted half note then becomes 3 beats. So that's what I'm going to put for how much it equals. My 1 dotted half note is equal to 3 beats. So let's pretend that I had 3 dotted half notes, and I wanted to add all of them up. Well, each one would be worth 3 beats, so this would be 3 plus 3 plus 3, and altogether that would be 9 beats. See, so guys, music math never gets too hard, and pretty soon this will be so easy for us that our brain will start to do it automatically, which is pretty cool. Always remember, guys, just go back into the video or hit pause if I'm moving too fast or you need to make sure that you write something down. All right, guys, this is going to be our last note that we learn about today. This is called a whole note. Now, our whole note is our longest type of note that we're usually going to see. My whole note is actually easier to draw because it's basically just an oval and it's empty. So all of our other notes, they have that stick attached to them, not my whole note. My whole note is like flying solo. It's just got its empty oval, and it's my longest note, so that means it's equal to 4 beats. So if you guys remember, my quarter note and my quarter rest, they were worth only 1 beat. That makes them the shortest one that we learned about today. Then my half note was equal to 2 beats, my dotted half was equal to 3 beats, and now my whole note is equal to 4 beats. That makes it the longest one that we're hearing. So if I had, let's pretend, 2 whole notes, I was putting them together, then I would be adding 4 beats plus 4 beats, and that would get me 8 beats. This is a lot of the type of math that we're going to be doing today, scholars. And actually, our next slide, we're going to start putting all these notes into different types of equations. So let's take a look and see what that looks like. So like we just learned, since all of our notes have a certain amount of counts, you guys, is another way to say beats. They're synonyms, they're the same word, just different ways of saying it. So since all of our notes have a certain amount of beats, we can use them like math equations. That's what I was doing in all those examples. So you don't actually have to write anything down for this slide, scholars. I'm going to make everything in red, but these are some examples of music equations. So first, let's take a look at my first equation over here, that's addition. My first equation, the first note I see is a quarter note. I know it's a quarter note because it's filled in and it's got a stick attached. So my quarter note was equal to 1 beat. Now I'm going to add another note to it. My next note is just a whole note. I know that because it's empty and because it doesn't have a stick next to it. So my whole note was equal to 4 beats. Now when I add 1 plus 4, that's how I get to 5 beats. This person didn't write the word beats in, but we, remember, always want to make sure that we do that, because if we don't, people don't really know what we're talking about, especially people that have never done music before. So make sure that you're always writing in that word beats so that we know we're talking more about music. Now let's take a look at this second equation. This second equation, we started off with a whole note. Now my whole note, if I'm remembering right, or if I'm looking at my notes, they tell me that my whole note is equal to 4 beats. Now, but this equation uses subtraction. So I'm taking away from my whole note, and right next to it is a quarter note. My quarter note, if I look at my notes, is worth 1 beat, 1 by itself. So altogether, when I subtract 1 from 4, that gives me 3. beats. Remember, scholars, you don't have to write down this slide. You're going to get more opportunities to do some music math equations. And that's actually what we'll move on to now. So guys, before we move on, what I want you to do is practice some music math equations by pausing this video and try solving them on your own. So actually, these music math equations look very similar to the ones that I just did with you. You can see that we have our types of notes and we have a box, except these boxes are empty because that's what you're solving. So I want you to hit pause, and then when you're done solving these equations, like on a pencil and with paper, when you're done solving these, then you're going to push play on this video and we're going to double check our work all together. Okay, so go ahead and hit pause and try solving. All right, scholars, if you have finished solving all 4 of these equations, let's check our work together. So my first equation is an addition one. I'm talking about this one right here. Now my first note in this equation is a half note. I know that because it's empty and it's got a stick attached. So my half note is worth 2 beats. Now I'm going to add a quarter note. My quarter note is worth 1 beat. So when I add these 2 together, I get 3 beats. Not so bad, right? Now let's go to our next addition equation. So for this one, I'm starting off with a dotted half note. I know this because it looks just like a half note. It's empty, it's got a stick attached, and it's got its dot following it. Remember, that little dot adds that extra beat. So all together, this is going to be 3 beats by itself. Then when I add my next note, first I have to check what type of note it is. This note is a whole note. That makes it worth 4 beats. Altogether, I've got 7 beats. Make sure that you write the word beats in, scholars. If you didn't, just go back and go ahead and add them to your equations. Now my next equation is a subtraction equation. I'm subtracting one whole note from another whole note. Well, my first whole note is worth 4. I'm going to subtract another whole note that is also worth 4 beats, and that leaves me with 0 beats. I'm left with nothing. They kind of canceled each other out. But my last whole note is not being subtracted from another one. So what I have here is a dotted half note. Remember, that's worth 3 beats. And it's being subtracted from a whole note, and I was just talking about how my whole notes are worth 4. So what I'm left with is just 1 lonely beat. All right, guys, I hope that went pretty smooth for you guys. And now let's start talking about your Google Classroom assignment and what you should finish. So scholars, now it is your turn to go back into Google Classroom and click on the assignment, because there's 2 pictures that I left you. Now these 2 pictures, this is what they look like. They're like 2 worksheets that are full of these music math equations. So you can see them right there next to all the little red dots that I wrote. So scholars, you're not going to print these 2 pictures out. You're not going to print the worksheets out, scholars, okay? Don't worry about printing them because you do not have to. Instead, what you're going to do is just write out the equations. So if you're practicing these at home, what you would do is write out, I'll use that one as an example, you would write out a half note minus a dotted half note equals, and then you would tell me how many beats it is. So I want you to figure out how many beats each of these is, and if you want to take it one step further, you could tell me what kind of note is equal to that beat. So let's pretend that we're solving this one. We have a half note minus a quarter note. Well, a half note is 2 beats, a quarter note is 1 beat, so I would be left with 1 beat. And what's the same as 1 beat? A single quarter note. So if you want to take it a step further, you can totally do that. You will definitely get some extra points for doing that. Okay, scholars? So for your directions, remember, go back to the Google Classroom assignment, so that you can see these two worksheets bigger and better. And then when you click on those, you're going to solve all the equations that are in those worksheets. Then you are going to take a picture or a video of your worksheets. So not your notes that you made today, you guys, your worksheets, your equations that you finished. Okay, you'll take a picture or a video of it, and then you're either going to show me in Google Classroom, like you can add it to the assignment, or you're going to show me in Flipgrid. This Flipgrid code and the Flipgrid link that I'm going to put in your Google Classroom assignment, they're the same from the very beginning of the year, you guys, okay? So I know lots of us are already logged in. It's the exact same link that you've known. Okay, scholars, so let's review just one more time. Go back to Google Classroom and click on the two pictures that I put in the instructions. Then you're going to solve all of the music equations. You're going to take a picture or a Flipgrid video, and you're going to turn in the music equations when you're all done with them to the assignment. Okay, scholars, remember, use Flipgrid or Google Classroom. Just choose one of them to turn in your music equations. All right, guys, I'm really excited to see all of your work done. And remember, just let me know if you need some extra help, or try rewatching this video if you maybe missed something. Okay, guys, I'll see you guys soon. Bye.